The drive from the university was mostly a blur. I slept half of the way there in the back seat, surrounded by our luggage. We took I-90 all the way, a straight shot of interstate blacktop, cutting through small towns and county seats. 2 hours of hills, bleeding red clay and lined with knotty oaks. Before the time I dozed off, the land was beginning to level out, to turn into fields and irrigation machines and faraway tractors and bulbous mounds of hay. When I woke up, my jaw ached, and there out my window was the Delta. Flat, wide, mosquito-heavy. We arrived just after lunch, a sharp sun pressing down on us. The large farmhouse shuttered and locked, flanked on either side by long stretches of gutted pasture. It was October, and Forney told me when we pulled up the drive that the sharecroppers who rented the land from his mother had been readying the ground for winter, a hard freeze being predicted in this year's Farmer's Almanac. It seemed crazy to me, the very idea of winter, since fall hadn't yet made an appearance here. Slick greens still breathed from the scrubby cottonwoods and the pines. We were lushly secluded from the thrumming outside world, and I think that is what we all wanted on this trip. While we unloaded the car, a large bear-like dog showed up at the edge of the yard, silent and watchful, seeming to consider what to do with these strangers it had caught trespassing in its yard. I like a dog to be a dog, to bark and huff and wag its tail, but this one's reluctance to do any of these things unnerved me. Old Hooch, Forney said. The bastard lives. Does it mean? I asked. Forney laughed. He's lived with my mama for most of his life. That would make anybody mean. I followed them into the house with my duffel bag, but couldn't shake the feeling that the dog was studying me, studying all of us. After I put away my things and went back downstairs, we decided to clean the place up a bit before we ate dinner and started drinking in earnest. The house had been in hibernation ever since Forney's mother had left 2 weeks ago for her cruise to Barbados and needed some sprucing up. We cleaned it thoroughly, using yellow gloves and medical-scented baking soda when needed. Then we uncovered most of the furniture. Forney and I decided it would be a good idea to carry one of the couches out to the front porch. We picked the largest, one that could easily seat 3 people. Let's test it out, Forney said, after we had shoved aside some expensive-looking metal rocking chairs and positioned it beside the swing. I want to make sure I can sit here and see the sunrise in the morning. He glanced around him at the cluster of trees that hid the dirt road from our view, then at the great empty sky, as if he had never grown up here and were looking at them for the first time. This is east, right? I sat beside him on the couch and nodded to my left. More northeast, I think. Look at the angle of the sun above the pines. You know such practical things, Tuck, he said. About that time, the dog plodded into the yard again, its nose close to the ground, following a scent. We watched it for a few moments without comment. The animal always seemed to be bounding when it walked. Big and bulky, fur clumped in some places, mangy in others, leaves and cockleburrs matted deep within the unwashed shag around its chest and rear legs. Forney began to explain the dog's sad history to me. How Forney's mother had never pinned or chained the dog when she first bought it, never bothered to train it either, letting the creature roam at will the uninterrupted acres of field and the small scratch of woods and the riverbed behind the house. His mother had originally bought the dog, which was half Pyrenees, half Commodore, for security purposes when Forney's father died. Soon, though, she grew tired of it, much as she did her boyfriend's. Said she gave it to the woods, Forney was saying, his legs propped up on the porch railing. But he always circles back here, like he's waiting for something, maybe for someone, or son of a bitch. I began to think differently about the dog while hearing this. The way its ragged paws clutched at the ground as it slowly mulled about the yard in front of us was almost heartbreaking. I got up from the couch and moved to the edge of the porch. Once or twice I called the dog by name. The dog's floppy ears curved and got pointy. It lifted its boxy head from a clump of monkey grass, meeting my eyes with its own lackluster black ones. We were just a few feet apart. Here, I said, and held out my hand, and even wiggling my fingers. Come on, boy, I said, and the dog crooked its head sideways. It began to trot, like a small pony, my way, heading for my fingers. I glimpsed its surprisingly white teeth just in time to retract my hand. The dog's jaws made a loud clapping noise as they clamped shut on empty air. I flew backwards and landed awkwardly against one of the arms of the couch. Upset, the dog snorted, the first sound I'd heard it make since our arrival. "Easy, boy," Forney said, and I wasn't sure if he was talking to me or the dog. Reagan, hearing me fall, had rushed outside. "My God," she said, speaking to Forney, breathless. For a minute, I wanted to see the two of them go at it. I kept an eye on the dog for the rest of the afternoon while we lounged on the front porch, drinking tall glasses of gin and tonic. The more I drank, the more comical the dog became. After the near bite, it retreated to the spidery shadow of a sweet gum, where it stayed for the rest of the afternoon. By evening, with the sky coated in fiery oranges and reds, Reagan and I moved from the front porch to the side of the house so that we could soak up the last bits of the afternoon light and give Forney some space. He'd brought his electric typewriter with him and was itching to use it. You could always tell when he was ready to write. His eyes would glaze over and he would chew on the tips of his fingers. He'd get all nervous. I had often wondered just what went on inside his brain that kept him from writing his own poetry, and always figured it must have been something like a jumble of words, all twirling and swirling around in there, like those make-your-own-poem magnets that you find on the doors of refrigerators, an endless combination that was maddening for him. I think the poems he retyped for other more famous poets settled him, gave order to the mess in his brain. While he typed, Reagan and I ventured to the tin shed and found amid the rusty bush hog and a menacing-looking combine and other pieces of bladed farm equipment I don't have words for, an old hammock, yellowed but still functional. We carried it outside and fastened it between two sturdy-looking pines. The dog shuffled out of the shade and came to investigate. When it got close, sniffing and slobbering, I lost my balance for a minute and stumbled against the hammock, almost falling in it. "You are drunk," Reagan said. "Drunk, drunk, drunk." She shook her head when she spoke, letting her buttery yellow hair fall over her face. "Not so much," I said, and the dog sat down a few feet from us, placing its head on top of its massive paws. I tapped the hammock, making the net swing casually as if moved by a breeze. "Ready for the lazy and the free," I said, which I thought was witty, but Reagan just shook her head. "I need more gin," she said. She was wearing a purple bikini top, and the rhinestone of her belly button was glittering like a fleck of shattered glass. She wobbled a little as she tried to maneuver herself in the hammock, which made me realize she was a little drunk too. She eased herself into the hammock, careful not to flip, and once settled, she undid her top. "Heavens," she said quietly, and I had the impression that she had forgotten I was there. But then she held out her hand to me and said, "We need some vitamin D. Come lie with me and be my friend." I slid on the ground faster than I had intended and became dizzy. The gin was really working on me now, and I had slowed down to let it. My head was beginning to feel too heavy for my neck, and I imagined it breaking off and rolling across the yard, the dog playfully chasing behind it. "Don't think Hooch will ever cotton to us," I said. Reagan lifted her head and considered the dog. "It's so ugly, but then again, there must be something special about a dog that's all bite and no bark. Maybe it's forgotten how to bark, I mean." I rubbed my tongue along my teeth. My mouth was dry and my molars felt as if they didn't belong there. "I need another drink," I said. "Oh, me too." I got back to my feet rather easily, but it took me a second or two to remember why I'd gotten up there in the first place. Before I could leave, Reagan's hand caught the elastic band of my gym shorts and pulled me over to her. Her fingers traced my thigh before disappearing up my leg. Her hand felt good, just as it had the night before in the car, and I let her touch me. If I had been soberer, I might have gotten angry with the way she randomly put her hands on me, as if I were hers. I grabbed her wrist, and that was enough for her to stop and to take her hand away. "He can probably see you," I said, and she pulled down her sunglasses to the crook of her nose. "Scaredy cat," she said. "Be quick with the drink. I want to go to bed good and stupid."